Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I'm your host and CEO of VitalityOET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or that weight gain around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere despite you not changing anything. So back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet nothing seems to be working. In fact, it feels like you are putting in all this effort and you are just moving backwards. But we know now that your body is inherently different now that you've gone through these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life so you can reach those health and fitness goals, live a life full of vitality, feel in control and at home in your body again, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today I want to cover 7 different strategies for when your weight loss stalls, when you hit those weight loss plateaus. So I want to cover what influences how many calories you burn, right? How weight loss actually works, how to assess if you actually are in a plateau or that weight loss stalled state, and how to assess that for yourself. 7 steps for addressing those weight loss stalls if you actually are in a weight loss plateau. And then, of course, always talking about special considerations for perimenopause and menopause in the years that follow, because that's why you're here. Okay, so we're going to hop right in because I know this is a very common topic that we cover with women all of the time on calls. So we're going to talk about weight loss plateaus, okay? Because this is where really it just feels like your progress just comes to a screeching halt and you don't know why, right? It's like your body stops responding. But a true weight loss plateau is when your body stops making progress because your metabolism has adapted. It has slowed down. Your calories in to calories out now match, okay? And it's not just how much you eat and how much you exercise. There are a lot of different things that are going to influence this, which a lot of people do not consider, and it's really important to understand. So first of all, what are the main categories of how you burn calories? It's not just exercise. In fact, exercise contributes the smallest amount of calories out in a day, only 5 to 15%. That's it. Okay. The next biggest category is your thermic effective food, which can be 10 to 20% of your calories out in a day. That's how many calories your body burns during digestion. Then we have NEAT, which is our non-exercise activity, which is 15 to 30% of our calories out. So this is doing laundry and yard work and housework and walking and taking the stairs and getting groceries, those kinds of things that are not exercise. And then the biggest category is your metabolism, your BMR. That is 60 to 80% of your calories burned in a day is just how many calories your body would burn just being at rest. And the things that influence are your hormones, your stress response, how much muscle mass you have, your inflammation. All of these things are internally in your body are dictating how many calories your body burns at rest. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are putting most of our effort in maintaining a good, fast, healthy metabolism. Okay, so if we want to increase our NEAT, we would just increase our steps, right? Exercise, you can work out a lot more, but you're not necessarily going to burn more calories. You want to exercise in a way that helps increase your calories out just at rest, and that's by building muscle mass, which doesn't happen with just cardio, doesn't happen with the HIIT, the boot camps, the circuit training, the classes that give you 15 seconds to a minute rest. It's not your Orange Theories, your F45s. Those are not helping improve your metabolism by building muscle mass. Muscle burns a lot of calories at rest, so we want to exercise in a way that helps build and maintain our muscle mass, which, by the way, is a lot harder during perimenopause and menopause. Because when estrogen levels go down, our muscle building signal decreases. So we have to be much more intentional with our exercise to help boost our metabolism, to burn more calories out in a day just by resting, right? Which is pretty awesome. Makes it easier to burn calories. Thermic effective food to help improve that. We're having more whole foods than processed foods, more fiber, making sure that we are having protein at all our meals because protein burns more calories during digestion than carbs and fat do. So I'm going to touch a lot on all these things as we continue on. But the big thing that I really want you to understand from this is that the biggest calories out is coming from your metabolism. And when you hit a weight loss plateau, it's because your metabolism is slowed down. So let's say, if you're watching on YouTube, this will be easier for you to see, but let's say your calories are up here. You're at 2,200 to 2,000. That's your maintenance, right? So to lose weight, you eat below that, right? So you'd be at 1,800 calories. Awesome. So now we have this gap of your maintenance of 2,200 to 2,000-ish. And over time, your metabolism internally through hormones and your thyroid and all these things start to bring your metabolism down and down and down. And then boom, all of a sudden, now your maintenance is 2,000 to 1,800-ish, right? So now you got to eat less than that to see, more weight loss, right? So a true plateau is where your metabolism slows down to match the food intake that it is receiving. Okay. So that's like technically how that works, calories in, calories out that way, right? But you have to remember fat loss is a little bit more like threading a needle, if this makes sense. Your metabolism has a sliding scale of maintenance. So some people might have maintenance might be 1,800 to 2,000. Some people might have a 400 calorie spread of where their body can maintain at. So we need to make sure that we get out of that range in order to lose weight. However, it can be really hard if your metabolism slows down very quickly, right? And I did a whole podcast on fast versus slow metabolism, so you can go back and listen to that one. But you need to realize that this is why you can't just be in a low calorie state forever, because when your metabolism slows down, then you're stuck. And you can only drop down so far before it starts to affect you negatively hormonally. You start having more hormonal symptoms, and then you can actually start gaining weight because the stress response is too high on your body. So most of you think that you are in a plateau because you are not making progress, right? So the first thing we want to do is really determine, are you actually in a fat loss plateau? And are you actually adhering to your goals and the plan, right? So if you're working in coaching with us, for example, we give outlines for a reason, especially in fat loss, because you could actually be on the lower end of your maintenance, right? Some people have that bigger range. And so if we're not adhering to all the goals, like the activity levels or the calories or getting enough protein, the change in your thermic effect of food, so how many calories you burn through digestion, that could put you back into maintenance, right? If we're having foods that are more processed than whole foods, that doesn't require as much energy. So there's all these things contribute to, are you actually in your deficit or not? It's not just your calories. There's a lot of other things that are nuanced that are going to contribute to your ability to lose weight. So you have to really be careful. And this is why we have like spreadsheets and pay attention to people's food diaries and pay attention to steps, because sometimes it doesn't take much for people to get out of their deficit and then be stuck in their maintenance and they're not seeing changes anymore. That's why consistency matters. So step number 1, let's assess if you are actually truly in a plateau, in a weight loss stalling, or if you're just at your maintenance because you're not adhering to everything. And most people, when they start to see the scale not move where they want it to, or it's not going as quickly, or they feel like it's not moving at all, their first instinct is to slash their carbs, to start exercising like crazy, to reduce their salt intake. That is exactly what we do not want you to do, okay? So rather than making a ton of changes because you're panicking and going back to what's familiar, what quote unquote worked before, but if it worked, would you really be here? Probably not, right? Because you lost the weight and gained it back. That's not what we're doing here. We're losing the weight permanently. We're keeping it off. So the first thing that you want to ask yourself, right, before we start panicking and changing all these things, we need to assess where you actually at. So number 1, ask yourself, are you actually tracking accurately? So for example, 1 medium apple versus actually like weighing your apple, that could be 50 calories or more, right? And if you're doing that with multiple food items, you can easily be putting yourself more into maintenance, right? So as we're having a food scale or measuring can be so important. Just having like 1 medium or estimating all the time can really pull you out of your deficit quite easily. This is also where we want to make sure that you're being honest with your bites, licks, and tastes, because if you're, doing that all the time, plus you're just doing estimations all the time, plus you're eating out more than 1 to 2 days per week, all those little things add up and can easily add hundreds of more calories to your week, pulling you out of your deficit. So this is why when we're going into a fat loss phase, we personally have a fat loss readiness questionnaire that we do with people to see how long can you actually like stay on par for. Are you ready for this? Are we doing shorter fat loss phases? Are we doing longer ones? Because if you can't adhere, it's not going to be successful. And then you get frustrated because you feel like right? You quote unquote feel like you're doing all the right things and you're staying on track when really you're not. And then you get frustrated and then you just go like, screw it, this isn't working. Go back to like what you were doing before. Really increase those calories instead of going slowly. Then we see weight gain, right? So that is so important. The second thing is consistency. Are you actually being consistent day to day? Really? And this is where women are like, oh, I have my goals set to this. I'm like, I don't care what your goals are set at. I want to see day to day, where are things falling? Because usually it's not where you think it is. And it can be really eye-opening to women because they'll like track and be like, oh, okay, I'll just try better tomorrow. They'll track, oh yeah, I'll just try better tomorrow. And then when they send me their tracking info, they're like, holy crap, I went from 1,600 one day to 23 the next to 1,800 the next day. And then my carbs were here and then really low. And one day I got 50 grams of protein and the next day I had 140. And then my fiber was at like 50 and then it was down to 25. And it's like, yeah, of course your body's struggling. There's zero consistency there. So it's great to have the goals, but if you aren't reflecting and actually checking, am I actually hitting those goals and being consistent day to day? That answers your question. And for a lot of people, the answer is no, you're not, which sucks to hear, but it's the truth. So many women are going to be, reverse dieting or building their way up to a higher maintenance slowly. And that allows way more flexibility. You have way more wiggle room to, add in different foods and impromptu things. But when we're in fat loss, we want to get in, we want to get out, we want to be as exact as we can, be a little bit more on the strict side, right, in order to continue progressing because our body doesn't like fat loss. And it will do everything that it can to prevent it from happening. This is just human nature and biologically, physiologically, how our body is set up, okay? So that means that fat loss isn't easy. So if we start deviating and adding a little bit of flexibility here and there, yeah, you're probably not going to progress. This is why we don't like to have women in a fat loss phase for more than 12 weeks at a time, because that's 3 months. 3 months of being like on it is like tough. So for me, I typically tap out around week 6 or 8, because after that, I'm like pretty over it. And I know that about myself. So if I have a goal that I want to achieve, I make sure that I'm doing these shorter stints with breaks in between, because that's going to help me get me to where I would need to be quicker in the long run than trying to stick to it for a very long term, having my metabolism slow down, and then I'm not really sticking to it, which is going to lead to weight gain. So this is really important. So you have to be consistent. And if you can't be consistent for a long period of time, that means you got to adjust the way that you're approaching things. The next thing too is we usually measure progress by the scale, right? Which we shouldn't be just using that. We need to be using multiple measures because the scale doesn't tell you everything. But there's so many things that are going to influence bloating and water retention, which can mask your weight loss, your fat loss, right? So there's so many things that are going to influence this. One is water. If you drank more or less water the day before, the scale's going to go up or down accordingly, right? Your hormones, where you are in your cycle, if you're still getting one, can lead to fluid retention based on like if our progesterone really drops quickly, if we see a huge spike in estrogen, right? Like these different things will cause fluid retention and bloating. But also not to mention like during perimenopause and menopause, our cycles are less predictable. So depending on where you are, and you don't know, right? Because some days you might have lots of progesterone, some days you might have very little, right? It's going to go up and down. So you need to be aware that like, this is why we weigh ourselves every day if you're going to weigh yourself, and then take the weekly average because our hormone levels are fluctuating so much. Stress. If you are stressed, your body will hold onto fluid and inflammation, which is going to show on the scale. So you could be losing weight or losing fat, but there's water retention that's masking that on the scale because we're focusing on fat loss, not weight loss. Weight loss means it can be from water, it can be from inflammation, it can be from muscle, right? Whereas fat loss is just loss of fat, which is what we want. We don't want to lose our muscle mass. We don't want to lose bone density and things like that, right? Because weight loss really could be like, you lost an arm and now you're 15 pounds lighter. You don't want that. You want fat loss. You don't want to lose an arm. You don't care about weight loss. Then we have carbohydrates. So 1 gram of carbs requires 3 to 4 grams of water to digest. So if you are having a more carb-heavy meal or carb-heavy day compared to usual, like let's say you're having usually, 100 grams of carbs, which is incredibly low and you should be eating more than that anyways. And then one day you have like 300 grams of carbs. That's 200 grams of carbs difference. Times that by 4, that's 800 grams of water. So you didn't get fat overnight. It's just water, which can be masking your scale progress, right? Constipation. This can happen from so many things. If you're not pooping, you're obviously going to be heavier because you have more crap in your body, literally. So this can happen from fluctuations in fiber. If your fiber is like 15 one day and 30 the next, you're probably going to be constipated. Protein. If you're having low protein, then one day you have high protein or vice versa, you're going to have constipation. Travel causes constipation. Dehydration. Lack of sleep. What food choices you're making. All of those things are going to influence constipation and your ability to have regular bowel movements, which is going to influence the scale. Salt. If you have more or less salt, that's going to hold onto more or less water. If you had a hard workout the day before, the scale's probably going to be higher the next day for more water and inflammation. That's normal. That's part of the healing process, the breakdown and building more muscle mass. Certain medications, so some antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, do cause fluid retention, birth control, lots of stuff. Food timing. If you ate later than usual and then weigh yourself, like say you usually have your bedtime snack at 8, but you ended up going out for dinner with friends and you stayed out later and you ate at like 9 or 10 and then you went to bed and weighed yourself in the morning, of course you're going to be heavier because there's more food in your body, right? Your poor sleep. If you didn't have a good night's sleep before, you're going to have more inflammation from cortisol levels compared to usual, which is going to cause an increase in the scale. So you need that checklist because you might feel like you're not making progress, but how many of those things are fluctuating? If the scale isn't moving or it went up, go through that list and check off from yesterday. Which of these things is accurate? Because that will tell you that this is a water fluctuation thing, not a fat thing. Okay. The next thing to consider is how are you measuring your progress? Are you using other metrics aside from just your scale? Because many times we use that number on the scale to assess progress. And before you think you're in a plateau just because weight isn't going down, do measurements, photos, how are clothes fitting? Because I'll tell you one thing, when I was 5 months pregnant, I was 145 pounds. I was also 145 pounds and I was like pretty lean. And let me tell you, those two pictures look very, very different. But if I was looking on the scale, there's no difference, right? So the scale is just a number because you can be losing inches, you can be losing fat, you can be putting on muscle, you can be looking more toned and strong and fit. You could be smaller and the scale can go up. I had a smaller waist diameter when I was 155 pounds versus 145 pounds. Body composition matters more. And then also, are you actually, in fact, still headed in the right direction, or are you just not as happy with how quickly it's going? Because loss is loss, right? Losing fat is losing fat. And realistically, most people think they're going to lose 5 pounds in a week, right? Or they think they're going to lose 10 pounds in a month. You're not. Weight loss, particularly during perimenopause and menopause, because of hormones and navigating around your stress response and all these things, plus your past dieting history and your metabolism and all those other things, plus HRT can cause fluid retention as well. So it's important to be aware of. you aren't going to see huge changes on the scale very quickly. It's going to be a half a pound to like a pound and a half per week. It's slower. And then people are upset about that. But it's like, do you want to lose just half a pound to 1.5 pounds of fat per week? Or do you want to lose 3 pounds and have the same amount of it be fat mass and then lose a bunch of muscle mass, which is really hard to build and maintain during perimenopause and menopause? It's also going to slow down your metabolism if you lose muscle mass, which is at 60 to 80% of calories out, which again is going to make it even harder to lose more weight as you go along, but also hard to maintain because your metabolism's slowing down. So anything faster than that, if we see someone dropping weight too low, we actually slow them down because fast fat loss equals muscle loss, and putting on muscle is hard. It takes a lot of work and intention and time, right? And you can mess that up very quickly. We don't want to lose that. So if everything that I just mentioned above checks out, you're consistent, you are, you're staying on par, you're measuring accurately, you've tracked all your bites, licks, and tastes, you're not eating out a ton, you are paying attention to all those things that we talked about, and everything is good. Nothing is fluctuating, which is very rare, right? That's ever the answer, but nothing is fluctuating. Then we can say, okay, then you are in a fat loss plateau, right? You are at a weight loss stalled position. And honestly, this is normal. It will probably happen several times throughout your fat loss journey. That's because your metabolism, like I said, is constantly adjusting to how much energy it is receiving and then trying to balance that out. That is how our body functions. It's how we survive. It is how we are hardwired, which sucks to hear, but that's the truth. So this is why we usually have to frequently move that target to continue fat loss by manipulating nutrition or activity or stress management and all these other things that I'm going to talk about. And there are many ways to really tackle a weight loss plateau. And I'm going to talk about the 7 big ones here. So the first one is what everyone's go-to is reducing calories slowly, right? But here's the thing. A lot of you go from like, I'm eating normally at 2,000 and then boom, we're at 1,200 calories, which I'm like, why? All we got to do is get outside of that, out of that maintenance, which might be like 1,900 to like 2,100, right? So why are you dropping all the way down to 1,200 and risking losing that much muscle mass when you could just drop to like 1,600 and see changes, right? 1,700 and see changes. Why would you do that? So we slowly decrease your calories over time, figure out what that initial jump needs to be, and then see how your body adapts. Is your metabolism going to slow down quickly? Is it going to slow down slowly? And this is why it takes some troubleshooting to see how your body responds. And we need to make sure your body is ready for this as well, which for most of you, they're not because you haven't been eating consistently at a high enough intake for long enough yet. Otherwise, this will not work anyways. So there's that too. Your metabolism is all the way down at 1,200. We can't go below that. So we need to build that metabolism back up, that's 60 to 80%. So now we have room to play with, because otherwise, what are you doing? You're miserable. You feel like crap. Okay, so that's one strategy, is to reduce your calorie intake. I personally will always try to do everything else that is on this list first, because I love food and I want to eat as much food as possible and still see results. It is the most fun and the best way to go about it. We want to eat as much food and still see changes as possible compared to eating as little as possible, because that's a lot less fun and you feel like garbage. Number 2 is looking at your food quality. So processed versus whole foods. Remember, we talked about the thermic effect of food, how many calories it takes to digest food. The more processed something is, the less energy it takes to break down. So this includes your keto brownies and your protein bars and all those things, because they're highly processed. They got lots of ingredients and it takes less energy to break those down, but also you're likely going to see some inflammation. I see this happen in a lot of women who have the low carb, high protein bread when really they're not low carb. If you look at the label and the fiber, we'll get into that another day. The low carb wraps, the keto cookies and Pop-Tarts and all those things, you're not going to burn as many calories compared to just like eating some chicken or some hard-boiled eggs or some quinoa salad or whatever it is, right? We also need to know that those foods can also lead to bloating because of the lots of ingredients in it, the artificial fibers that are in it. Like there's 17 grams of fiber in some of those breads, which is insane. Like for me, I can only eat 15 to 20 grams of fiber in a day, and then like otherwise I get constipated. That doesn't work for me. I can't eat super high fiber. And for a lot of women, they end up eating, like if they have a sandwich one day, their fiber is like 60 grams of fiber in a day compared to like where they usually are at like 20, 25. So of course you're going to have issues at bloating and digestion and not feeling very good, more inflammation. So paying attention to your food quality and choosing more whole foods, very important. Also, foods that are naturally higher in fiber, so like your fruit and things like that, that have like natural occurring fibers, your whole grains, those are also going to be really great for you in terms of increasing the thermic effect of food. Because if we're eating less food, less calories, obviously we're burning less calories in digestion because we're consuming less. So this is why really focusing on whole foods can be super important. Same with protein. Protein burns more calories during digestion compared to carbs and fats. So prioritize whole foods, your protein, and your fiber. So reassess that before dropping your calories is always what I like to say, because if you don't have to decrease your calories, you are a much happier person and your body loves you for it. The next one is you could also increase your training slowly. So let's say you're working out for 35 minutes resistance training 3 days a week. We could up to 4 days a week, or we could take those 3 days per week and add an extra 10 minutes or add an extra exercise. Maybe we are adding some more reps. Maybe we are pausing more. Like there's lots of ways to manipulate exercise to help you burn more calories. But again, we want to make sure that what we're doing exercise-wise is contributing positively to our metabolism, how many calories our bodies burn at rest. So making sure that it is focusing on building and maintaining muscle as opposed to just trying to burn calories in a workout. Besides, those calorie watches are crap. They can be off by 115% in the calorie calculations. There was a Harvard study. There was a quote, I quoted it in another podcast, where they were shocked at just how terrible these fitness trackers are at calculating calories burned. So ignore those completely. The other thing that you can do are diet breaks. So diet breaks, you can do 1 to 2 weeks of a break, sometimes a little bit longer, depending on the person, how your body is responding, if you're stressed out, if you're sleeping well, all those kinds of things. And that helps make sure your metabolism doesn't keep slowing down. So this is what I do when I'm in a fat loss phase. Is like I said, 6 to 8 weeks is really my max. And then I feel not so great. So I do 6 to 8 weeks in a fat loss phase. And then I come up slowly for 2, maybe 3 weeks to maintain my results, but that allows my metabolism to come back up with it so it doesn't stay low, right? So my maintenance always stays around 22 to 2,400 calories. I drop down to like 1,800 calories around week 5. I might start seeing some plateauing, so I might drop my calories a little bit lower. Very rarely though, because I like food so much more. And then if I want a break, I'll take a diet break for 1 to 2 weeks, bring it back up slowly to that 2,200 calories so my metabolism stays nice and high. And then I can just drop down to 1,800 calories again and start losing weight, which is awesome. So that works really good for me. It works really well for a lot of our clients who, especially if you're traveling lots and you're really busy, diet breaks are really great and it helps prevent your metabolism from slowing down compared to if you just try to like eat low calorie forever and then you're not really consistent and you end up seeing weight gain and you're stressed out and all these things. Then we also have number 5, our refeed days. So this is where you can have 1, 2, 3 days of higher calorie intake to help with your mindset a little bit, right? But also to make sure that metabolism doesn't slow down again. So it just helps bring you back up. And it's not a huge jump up. It's just a little bit, but it helps remove stress from the body, re-energizes you, and helps your metabolism as well. Number 6 is steps. Keep some steps in the tank. I tell everyone this. Because if all I have to do is go for an extra 20-minute walk a day, I'd way rather do that than cut out 200 calories in my diet. Because I love food. I really do. I love, 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 love food. So this is why I always tell women on a day-to-day basis, what's realistic and where do you fall regularly? Like, can we try and get those steps up to maybe 7,000-ish, maybe see where you're at, right? But leave room so that you can increase your steps by 2,000 to 3,000 per day or a few days a week when you're in a fat loss phase. So you can utilize that as a tool to help with calories out without having to drop your calories. Because again, that's a lot more fun than just reducing your food intake. It'll also make you just a better person. And then number 7 is stress reduction. This is huge. We push this so much with our clients. The clients who do this are the most successful. This is so important because a fat loss phase is very stressful on the body. It is a stress. It increases your cortisol. It slows down your thyroid function. It reduces sex hormone production. We see this. So we need to help make sure we're buffering that stress so we're not seeing hormonal symptoms come back, so that we're not seeing our cortisol levels spike, so we're not seeing digestion slow down and our bloating get worse and our sleep and energy get worse. This is like a non-negotiable. So can you just improve your self-care without having to change anything else and see changes? Because that's freaking awesome. So this is like, the reason this is so important during perimenopause and menopause is that when estrogen goes down, we have a much harder time buffering stress. Before we could handle a 9 out of 10 before cortisol went up. And when cortisol goes up, it slows down our sex hormone production. It slows down our thyroid function. It makes our blood sugar control worse. It results in more bloating. There's more inflammation. We're waking up in the nighttime. We're more wired and tired. We have energy crashes. Our liver takes a hit. It's harder to build and maintain muscle mass. We have more cravings. We're more irritable. And this all happens when cortisol goes up. But when estrogen is there, it helps buffer that stress. We can handle like a 9 out of 10. Now we can only handle a 5 out of 10 before all of these negative things start to happen, which sounds like all things that make weight loss a lot more challenging, right? So this is why you can't do the crazy cardio and the low carb diets and low calorie and the fasting and the not sleeping and drinking a ton of alcohol and being go and dealing with stress and taking care of others and all the things that are just a stress on our body. And then we try to push harder and it doesn't result in weight loss. It results in fluid retention and more inflammation and more hormonal imbalances. So making sure that you are actually doing some form of stress management while you are in a fat loss phase is super, super important. So I just want to cover those 7 here quickly again before I move on to something else here. But 7 steps to really help you tackle those weight loss plateaus in perimenopause and menopause are: you can reduce calorie intake slowly. This is always the last one I want to do. Look at your food quality. Are you still prioritizing whole foods, protein, and fiber? Increase your training slowly, your intensity, whether that's increasing the time that you work out, how often you work out, the intensity. Again, we got to buffer that stress, so be careful. You can do diet breaks for 1 to 2 weeks at a time. You can do refeeds for 2 to 3 days every week or so. You can increase your step count and then focusing on your stress reduction techniques. So whether that's just going for a walk or coloring in a coloring book or putting your feet up, really prioritizing sleep. Those are all things that are really going to be helpful for you. The other thing about sleep too is there's a study that came out recently that's just so interesting, that there was 2 groups in a calorie deficit. One group got 5.5 hours of sleep. One group got 8 hours of sleep. That was the only difference. And the group that had only 5.5 hours of sleep saw less fat loss, saw more muscle loss, which will slow down their metabolism, and they had higher hunger hormones. So their cravings were worse. They weren't as satisfied with food. And we already know that's an issue when estrogen goes down. So this is why sleep and stress management is so freaking important during fat loss. It is really a non-negotiable to really focus on, because we need to prioritize that in order to be successful. So either way, no matter what kind of strategy you use, it's important not to change too much at once. Because even if you think you should, because some of us get a little panicked when things stall, right? But usually has something to do with our hormones or where we are in our cycle, or we just weren't consistent, or we traveled, or we had too much salt because we ate out or whatever, right? Do not change everything at once, because then you don't know what's working and what helped the most. We want to make one change at a time. If the scale's fluctuating, we just keep doing what we're doing for that week, because most of the time it's going to settle in after a couple of days. And when you drop your calories at first, you're typically not going to see a change on the scale for the first week or so, because your body's trying to compensate with fluid retention. Okay. So if you're working with us, like, we are quite conservative in the changes that we make, and we do this on purpose because our bodies can be really reactive when we change too much too fast. So then we can see negative side effects from that with your sleep and your hormones and your energy, and like crashes in the afternoons and cravings and stuff like that. So we really do want to make sure that we are doing this appropriately, seeing how your body responds. Is it a quick responder where your metabolism slows down very quickly, or is it slow? How is your motivation and mindset and consistency? Do we have to do smaller fat loss phases with more breaks? Can we do longer ones? There are so many things that contribute to how we're going to go about this. And there's just don't try to take changes into your own hand where you feel like it's not working fast enough. If you are still moving in the right direction, it is working. It is working. But your biggest thing is that you're not being patient enough. And then by trying to change too much or go too fast, it can actually be detrimental, because you've done that before, right? And where are you today? Not where you want to be. So we can agree that stuff didn't work. So we got to do something different this time. We got to do it right. So are you really actually being patient with yourself? True, sustainable, and permanent weight loss takes time. But we've been so conditioned to believe otherwise due to diet culture and lose 30 pounds in 30 days and all these unmanageable processes that you just can't keep long term, and we don't understand how it affects our body long term. So have you actually given your body enough time to adjust? Or are you just like changing this, changing that, changing this, changing that? Like, your body has no idea what's going on. It doesn't work that way, right? Breakthroughs are often going to happen when you least expect them. So trust yourself, trust the process. If you're working with a coach, trust your coach, right? But there's lots of people who are like, I dropped my calories to this much and nothing is happening on the scale. Then you're down a pant size, but you're still mad about the scale. So do you care more about how you look in your body composition, or is the number on the scale more important to you? Because like I said, I was 145 pounds and looking pretty lean, and 145 pounds at 5 months pregnant. Looked very different. How would I rather look? The lean way, right? So don't get hung up on the scale so much. Focus on, circumferences and how you're feeling and your sleep and your energy and your bloating and pictures and how clothes are fitting. Those things matter the most. So to recap that, let's assess if you're actually in a weight loss plateau first by, are you actually tracking accurately? Are you measuring and weighing? Are you paying attention to your bite, licks, and tastes? Are you eating out more than 2 times per week? Are you actually consistent day to day? Look back and look at your protein, look at your calories, look at your fiber, and then go through the checklist of what's causing the scale to fluctuate. Did any of this happen? More or less water? Where you are in your cycle? Is there more stress? More or less carbs? Have you had regular bowel movements? More or less salt? Did you have harder workouts this week or the day before? Was there any changes in your medication or your HRT? Did you eat later than usual? Did you have a poor night's sleep? And then, are you measuring with more than just a scale? Are you using pictures? Are you using the way clothes are fitting? Are you measuring circumferences? And then if all of those things are actually, on par, Then we can look at improving your stress reduction techniques, increasing your steps, adding a couple refeed days, maybe doing a diet break, increasing your training intensity, looking at your food quality. This should be the first step. Is there mostly whole foods? Are you prioritizing your protein and your fiber? And then we can look at reducing calorie intake. That's always the last one that I want to do, because cutting out food is not fun. Food is meant to be enjoyed. Not eating sucks. So if any of you guys have any questions on where you should be, if you're eating enough food and ready for a fat loss phase, will your body actually respond? How many calories should you actually be eating? How many calories you need to eat in a deficit? Message me. I will do this for you for free, always, every single time. The only thing that I ask is that you actually follow the recommendations, that you actually do the damn thing, because it breaks my heart every time. This happened to me again the other day, where someone was asking for a guide, and I asked them, hey, how did the reverse dieting go? And this, that, and the other that we talked about a year ago, because I can see in my social media when the last time we spoke was. I tried it for 2 weeks, nothing changed, so I didn't continue on. Of course, nothing changed in 2 weeks. You need to stick to it long term. We're talking 3 to 6 months here. You're not going to see these huge jumps, leaps, and changes in just a couple weeks. So nothing breaks my heart more than to see that you haven't done anything since the last time we spoke. So reach out. I will help you. No strings attached, or you can book a consultation call. That's always the quickest way, because my DMs do get very busy. So book a consultation call. We'll help you figure that out. But let's commit to yourself, commit to the process, because where you could be a year from today if you actually just followed through, trusted the process, and did the thing and learned, you could be a totally different person in a year. But because you're not going to get there in 2 months, you give up. And that's really sad in my eyes. So I love you so much. Have a good rest of your day. Don't forget to share this with the people that you love, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.